you have done a wonderful job on this. I mean, we've all, my name is Kay Howe, and I've been most recently associated with the Boulder, the Museum of Boulder. You've done a terrific job. I mean, this has floated out here forever, and we all think it's never going to happen. But you've done a wonderful job. You're practical and experienced people. But there is a transition here, and Jan is hinting at it. We're all sitting here in our various nonprofits. We have debt. We have challenges in operating costs. We have all kinds of things like that. And we are in that space of, oh my God, this is wonderful, and they're going to take it all away from us. And all the struggle of all the years. Boulder spends a lot of money on open space. It's probably the religion of Boulder. And the money that's devoted to the arts is fairly minimal. So my question, beyond this sermon, is, are there examples in the many communities that you have mentioned? What sort of generous, thoughtful, creative, enduring people work through this first stage to make the whole community understand how this is not potential loss for us, but potential gain? And nice words about this are not going to do it. When you talk about getting together, for example, the boards of all the nonprofits in Boulder, that's going to be quite a show. I'd like to be there. Oh, look, they're here. We all looked around today and thought, who's not here? Anyway, I would love to have really practical, experienced thoughts on that.
There's a lot of great examples of this, and it comes down again to that champion, that group saying, we're going to do this, right? We're going to write the $1.5 million check to seed this and to have something grow from it. So that could come from, I'm going to point at the city, right? That could be the city saying, hey, we love what's here. Here's $1 million, organization, go out and do this. Right, we're coming together as a community to say, these are the important next steps for us to do that foundation. At a certain point, the practicality of this becomes seed money to develop the business plan, to come together to say, this is what the cultural trust is, and this is the plan that it moves forward, right? There's a lot of great ideas here today, but that seed money for the business plan, and that doesn't have to come from the city, right? A lot of times it does. Sometimes it comes from a developer. Sometimes it comes from a very impassioned donor who says, I believe in this and I want this to be a part of my legacy in Boulder. So here's this money. Here's $25,000, and here are 5 of my friends who are going to match my $25,000, and here's the $1 million plus to make this happen. I think you need to find that to get this momentum going. And again, it goes back to that champion to say, let's get this plan in place to make this happen. Because right now, as we look back on what happened in 2014, we started asking the question, well, why hasn't anything happened? And it is because of that. Someone has to stand up to say, I will do this. And that one person doesn't have to be an individual, but it has to be coming together, because otherwise you're just going to talk in circles about this, and in 10 years we're going to be back here having the same conversations of need and more need. So finding the money and saying we're going to do this, action is what truly is that realistic next model.
I just want to add on, there was a number of different models that we looked at for how these sort of operations, these collective operations work. And we landed on the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, knowing that the word trust in there had sort of 2 implications. And it really is going to be incumbent on this community to understand and to think about whether a collective voice in the arts community is stronger than sort of everybody individually trying to, make their challenges met. And so if there is an opportunity for a collective voice through these, the ability to be represented as an organization in the larger context of the cultural community, I believe that is a stronger voice than each sort of bifurcated effort that happens nobly in the community.
I'm going to pile on as well, quickly, if I could. In our listening session of yesterday, in some of this detail will come out in the report. But you could get to the gold square immediately, potentially with a for-profit model that where a promoter brings in traveling shows, concerts and plays and so forth, and the community gets left in the dust and has no involvement, no stake, no potential for growth and collaboration. And we've rejected that model. Similarly, we can't go to the gold square right away or even very soon potentially, because to your point, none of these small institutions could afford to locate there or to perform there. And so this incremental and less expensive approach in the early going addresses some of these realities, and hence the recommendation.
More questions?
My name's Beth Merkel. I'm the executive director of Boulder Metalsmithing Association. And I wanted to say, first of all, what a great reuse E-Town is, because this used to be a very small church, and I got married here in 1981. Just a couple of comments, really, more than anything else, is this discussion started out as, well, I think words are important, first of all. And this discussion started out as an arts complex visioning workshop. And today, the problem statement is all about a performing arts center. And those are not necessarily the same thing. And I think it's important that maybe we add in the word community, which I saw on the slides, creative community center or a community arts center, but to specify that this is strictly a performing arts center, I think is leaving a lot of people in the dust.
We agree.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to just bring up, which is there is a facility, there's a strange building up on 36 between North Boulder and Lyons, and it's the TiVo warehouse, and it's very empty and has been for a while, and I think that might invite some ideas.
Dylan, can we add a magenta circle to that?
I don't personally think that the facility needs to be placed in downtown Boulder in order to be a success for either the community nor for the people that are located there. I also wondered if anybody knows that, a lot of people probably know this, but there is another very successful organization in Boulder that's breaking ground this weekend on a big project. The name of that organization is Studio Arts Boulder. And I wondered if anybody had talked to them about what they've been doing. They've had a capital campaign going on that's obviously very successful because they're breaking ground. They got a donation from a private developer of land, and they're building on it. And that has taken, as far as I can tell, 5 years or less. So I think there are some things that we can look around, and probably other people have some great ideas as to what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I totally agree with all your comments. I think maybe we didn't state it as well as we should have in the problem statement, but really the talk of a theater was the genesis, the starting point for the idea, and it definitely evolved into a complicated, multifunctional, multicultural, complex idea, which I think and it's continued to evolve as we've had this brainstorming session from maybe a single complex and building into a place that's more of a campus approach. So your point is very well taken, and it'll be very well extruded in the report that we produce. And the third point, we tried to talk to as many different types of artistic groups as we could. I don't think we caught all of them, but we're not the government. We did our best. I know about studio arts. It sounds great. And if we get to the point of a group of people, champions, pursuing a capital campaign, they'll definitely want to check in with them and learn some lessons from that. So thank you.
And just to add into that real quickly, our Tuesday morning started with the question of, so we need a performing arts center, right? So that's all that feedback that came from us on the first day. came down to that first question of, wait, is this about a performing arts center, or is this about that cultural creative community? And I think of all of our findings, that's the big takeaway here, is it's not just about the need for a performing arts center, it's about the need for this cultural creative community to be supported, so.
And again, I'll pile on, and I'll only add that for visual arts, the threshold for the projects tend to be lower. As Jenna mentioned, theaters are second only to hospitals in terms of their complexity and cost per square foot build. So that's the big challenge. That's the reason that you have to have a funding stack, because the dollars are incrementally much more to try to get something like that off the ground.
And we have a question right here.
Yes, I'm Mary Beth. I am the Director of Operations at the Spark, which is a venue organization that runs here in Boulder, and we actually have a model very close to what you presented today, already working in the community. So we would love to talk further with groups who continue to build this type of infrastructure. What we do is very small right now. We are only 5 years old, so we're in an infancy as far as like organizations in the city go, but we know exactly the challenges that we're talking about and then what the next few years are going to need to look like, because we just went through them. Recommendation though, as we're talking about an umbrella corporation, we have some of these organizations already operating in Boulder. So I think that's something for us also to look at, is not necessarily an organization like mine, but the Boulder County Arts Alliance that does work as an umbrella company for a lot of the organizations that are already out there. So we may be farther ahead in this process than we think if we start looking at the resources we actually already have in the city. So I just want to kind of point that out and open additional dialogue from a company who is about to be the only performing arts company in Boulder after BDT closes its doors.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, I'm Dave Folker, and I like the idea as a first step to create something akin to a cultural trust. And I simply have a question about that. The slide describing the cultural trust, if I'm remembering it correctly, didn't have any references to private sector or corporate involvement, but the pancake definitely had some layers that did. And so my question would be, do you think it's wise to incorporate something like that into the trust at the earliest stages? Has that been done in, is it Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh, is that where it is? So if I'd be curious what you can tell me about that.
One of the advantages of the cultural trust model and the umbrella is frankly that by aggregating the impact of the visibility of the programs and the collaboration of the programs, it actually begins to be able to attract corporate interest for support that is otherwise hard to gain at the grassroots level. So by being able to engage corporate contributions and support and say, you're able to support something community-wide and get that kind of impact, then I think you're able to introduce a level of corporate interest that typically doesn't happen until organizations reach a certain scale.
Additionally, real quick, a trust or a foundation of some type of umbrella entity can accept funds from both government and the private sector, whereas government cannot. And so an example of a transition recently just down the road is in Arvada, where the city had owned the Arvada Center for years, spun it off into an independent nonprofit entity. In one of the benefits of that model is it can now access corporate and private donations.
One more pile on. I definitely appreciate the comment. I will add, at least in my experience at Lincoln Center, which is of course, huge organization. The Lincoln Center has 12 different constituents, and one of the concerns when Lincoln Center was created, I'm sorry, the one in New York, one of the concerns when Lincoln Center was created is when you were chasing after corporate dollars, were you going to be asking the same corporations? There's some maneuvering when it comes to individual donors because, you know, you have a more personal relationship. But when you're talking to Google or somebody like that, Google doesn't want to have 15 people talking to you. So at Lincoln Center, they have the Corporate Consolidated Fund, and that is an aggregation of all of the corporate giving that goes into Lincoln Center in its total, and then there's a complicated formula for how it's distributed among the 12 resident companies.
So we have run late. Apologize.
I want to answer. So I'm Marta Kern, and I have different identities. And I'm a serial arts entrepreneur, I guess. And the identities are the Colorado Dance Festival, which is a major national festival while I was there. The International Tap Association, which is international while I was there, and now Eco Arts Connections. And I am so grateful that you guys have done all this work. I can't tell you. And I also want to echo Kay's and other people's comments that some of us in this room have Performing Arts Center PTSD, because this is the third one that we've been through, right? And these things are all so, so, so great right here. And it's the same thing again. And so what I want to say is, in terms of the theory, and there's a wonderful German expression, Theorie ohne Praxis ist Scheiße, which means, no offense, theory without practice isn't worth a whole lot. And so one of the things that we want to be looking at too is, in addition to this, is, I think, Dave, you were maybe alluding to this a little bit, in addition to the fabulous pancake illustration, I think there need to be contingents of beloved, wealthy people who go out to get more beloved, wealthy people that are part of this, and corporate people who go out to get more corporate people. And because we're here again as beggars, no matter what economic strata we're in ourselves personally. When I was in India one time, the cab driver thanked me for all the change I was giving him, and I said, well, why are you thanking me? He said, well, there was a beggar strike. And I said, what do you mean there was a beggar strike? He said the beggars all of a sudden realized they weren't getting enough money, and so they took all the change out of circulation and stopped the economy dead in New Delhi, right? And the reason I mention this is because I really would love for, in addition to these wonderful, more standard ways of thinking about this whole process, to also think about honoring artists for what they're so good at. And that is rethinking zoning in this city. I also come from the Dairy Art Center, which started, and we at the Colorado Dance Festival were the first organization there when it still smelled like sour milk. And brilliant Russ Wiltsey, and I forget who the woman was who helped start that whole effort, would parade potential donors through the building. And the Colorado Dance Festival just had the offices there that were started by community justice services prisoners who carpeted everything and painted everything. And the potential donors would look into our offices as if we were in a diorama or a zoo. And Russ would say on cue, this is what the building could be like. It could be filled with all kinds of people doing wonderful work. And the reason I say this is because not only are the buildings that you guys have identified, there are lots more other spaces. And if zoning could be changed so that artists could go in and do things like enterprise-free zones and use sweat equity to be able to fix place and to use those kinds of pop-up situations, because we've already done a whole lot of this stuff. It just hasn't worked because the people with power and don't, give us the money to actually do what we can already do. So I don't know about a performing arts center. I think it would be great, but I think there's so much potential in this very room and in the city already that could be turned over to artists if the structure, if the coordination, and if the just basic money could be given, would be so great. Thanks.
Thank you, Marta. Very well said.
Yeah.
And I think
Jen, do you want to wrap now or take one more?
Yeah, no, I think we should wrap.
Okay.
I think what Marta points out there is that there's probably ideas going in every one of your heads. And some of you made comments, some of you asked questions. There are so many great ideas in this room and outside in the community. And so I think what they tried to communicate here is The idea is not to go for the silver, the shiny dime, you know, at the end. It's to start building something regularly, starting this year. And I will say this, I know there's some concern that is valid about, because each of your organizations has to raise money every year to make your numbers work. And the city has improved their funding of the arts, but Create Boulder has actually taken a small step in the last 2 years to try to get all of our arts organizations to speak as one voice. And we've actually seen some benefit in that. The city council has raised their level of funding for the arts when they hear this voice. That's something that cannot be done by your organization or yours individually. It has to be done as a community. That's why Create Boulder is here. We are a small little organization, but we do have proof that if we work as one voice, one group, it can work. That's what they are proposing here. And we have to have more community meetings, I think, to discuss more, to flesh it out, and that's what we encourage you to be involved with. So, on behalf of Create Boulder, thank you so much for coming. I would encourage you to join us downstairs. We do have a time limit there of, I think, 3:45, because E-Town has another event coming in. But our panelists will be down there. Michael will be there, Deborah and I, as well as Fran. Yes, Elaine?
Is there a central place that if people have comments, questions, feedback, that information can be collected?
Her question was, is there a place where we can ask for feedback and get feedback? That's a very good thing that we haven't really thought about. We have videoed this, and we will follow up by sending that out to everyone, and we'll...
You could send it to info@createboulder.org.
Yeah, you can send it to info@createboulder.org. And then we'll come up with more of a plan than just, shuffling our feet up here in the front of this room.
Thank you.
So thanks again to each of you for coming to this event. Thanks to our panelists. And we hope to see some of you downstairs for a glass of water or wine or a piece of cheese or something. So thank you so much.
So I hope you join us.
Is that who? No.
Stay involved. Yeah, it would really.
Oh, that is Edinburgh. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's Edinburgh.